One? Yeah, works. So, hello everyone. Hope your path here was okay. Not too much snow here, unlike last weekends. So, who here is for the first time? Amazing, just like 5 people. Wow. Thank you for coming to this conference like every time. And thank you for coming to see what this is. So we are starting the next instance of DEVCLUB in English. I really hope everyone here understands English. I know this might not be the case. Like a month ago, I went to Estonian conference in Estonian, and it did worse than expected. But still. So, thank you. Today, we have 2 talks from 2 amazing speakers from big companies. It would be Andri Vanem from Eesti Energia, where we are currently located, about the general state of software development in Eesti Energia. And I'm pretty sure you must be very interested in how Eesti Energia does in the past year. The second one is Artjom Kurapov from Pipedrive about GraphQL and other like very smart stuff. Yeah. So everything very interesting. You will be a lot smarter when you go out, if that's even possible. I should say words of thanks to our supporters and sponsors. First of all, to Eesti Energia, who hosts this conference. Without them, we wouldn't get such good pizza and water, and most importantly, this room and live streaming and everything. So, thank you. And also, we got other supporters, quite a lot of them actually. Pipedrive, who hosts the other DEVCLUB conference, which is in Russian. WizardCat, then JetBrains. We got tons of JetBrains stickers, by the way, on the table there. Steelsoft, Perfect.EE, yeah, and DPK-ITOU. Probably everyone. Yeah, thanks to them. And I guess, without further ado, we will start. Welcome, Andri.
So, anybody here doesn't know Eesti Energia? Everybody knows. How many of you have a contract with us? 2. Well, basically, if you want electricity, then with Elektrilevi, you kind of need to have the contract, so you're tied up with us anyway. So, no problem here. But yeah, a little bit of agreement for today. You can ask, discuss, argue, however you feel about what I am actually talking about. So, yeah, let's get going. Today's topic, 50 Shades of Software Development in Eesti Energia. I was thinking about 50 slides, but 50 Shades is actually a little bit better. And actually, it's more of a way that it kind of resembles the movie. So you try to dominate over somebody. You understand that you are unable to do that, and you end up in a trustful and kind of a fine relationship. With boundaries, of course. Okay, a little bit about Eesti Energia. We have around 300 people, actually, in IT, working. In the whole enterprise, there is 5,000 already. And 1/3 of those 300 are actually software development teams who are working daily basis on customer software development. Yes, please.
And 2/3 is in IT department, what do we do?
Yes, the other 2/3 is business digitalization lines, where we do have product owners, we do have like IT operations, which is also quite big already, and of course the management. So, yeah. Out of those 105 people that we have today, we have 20 development teams. Very many loads and loads of interesting projects that you can do in Eesti Energia. And, well, nothing special about the tech stack. So there is Java, there is .NET, React, TypeScript, and other familiar tools that you can find in 80% of companies, actually. With the tech stack, I get quite a lot of questions that, okay, what is your tech stack? Well, we do Java. Okay, cool. So if you think of a tech stack as cars, then the parking lot out there would be like this. In the middle, we have the Java developers. In the back, there is C# developers. In front, there's TypeScript developers. So, yeah, quite boring, quite nice. But we also have a COBOL developer, you know. He can speak to the dead. Is it actual picture? Of a COBOL developer. Yeah, I believe so, yeah. Nobody has seen him, but we know that he's driving a golden Bugatti. Okay, to start up with our story in Eesti Energia, it all started for me in 2018 when I actually joined Eesti Energia. Situation: no working agreements in the teams, no quality control, no trust, zero creativity, constantly firefighting, and individualism was, quite high. Everybody was fighting for their individual bonus, whether I get the 4 stars or 3 stars. So, quite hard to work like this. And we had Prince2 with actually super complicated gates and boards process wrapped around it. Anybody familiar with Prince2? One unhappy person? 2? Oh, okay, good. I do not hate Prince2, so as a disclaimer, so Prince2 has its own place, so yeah, and it has very good values also. But yeah, there it was super complicated. And it was simplified process. How did we do our projects? Simple. Not very much. The problem was that each of those boxes had their own sub-processes. And actually, we had 43 pages of different processes how to do software development projects. And I picked out a few of my favorite ones. How to do plan of exceptions. In the beginning of the project, you needed to plan for exceptions. You didn't know what they were, but you needed to plan for it. Then, this is how to send out project closing notice. The notice was actually an email that you needed to send to the management board. Quite hard. Anybody of you need a process to send an email? Probably not. And my favorite one, how to learn from lessons learned. For real, there was a process that open up the lessons learned and read. The irony, it was called Managing Successful Projects with Prince2. Not a single project managed by Prince2 was successful. Yeah. So, with all this kind of situation with projects and all around it, well, we went over to the code and architecture. Our beloved architect, who is here with us today, looked at the code and the architecture, and he had only one emotion. It lasted for days. We had bugs open from 2014, spaghettis everywhere. We had no automated tests, no code reviews, no static code analysis, nothing. It was quite a bad situation that we had there. And also a few, or one good example of it. Yeah, please.
In the beginning, I thought it was not important, but now this question bothers me a lot. What is Prince2 exactly?
You have a better life if you don't know it. It's actually a project management kind of a framework. Yeah. So yeah, it's a framework, but we needed to add something there. So we added gates and boards and all that kind of stuff. So we made it a little bit more complicated.
It's not Scrum.
Yeah. It's not Scrum, not at all. Yeah. If you compare the picture of Scrum and maybe this Prince2, then you have, the Scrum wheels there, and then you have 200 pages of different themes that you need to fulfill, basically. So yeah, I am a Prince2 certified project manager myself. Never done any projects with Prince2. But yeah. But an example that we actually found, and we gave it a name, the times when David Copperfield was actually a developer. How many developers here? Very good. So next one is for you. Please tell me what is here on this line. What is written there? You want to refactor? Yeah, I know.
So if something is more than
While something, yeah, while what? While size 1 with, what comes next? Numbers?
Yes.
You sure?
It's not number. Like the price is calculation. Yeah, it's calculations.
Actually, this code is from a desktop application, which actually were for Windows forums, actually resized the window. And by the way, there is not 13 divided by 20. It's L3 divided by 20. Oh my God, I love the face that you right now made. It was like the mind was blown, like, what the hell? Yeah. Those are the examples that we have found. One of other things that we have, or I have done, is I usually go to Bitbucket and search for those bad words that you can write in code, and actually quite a few of those. Not very much. Yes, please.
I guess that's a good example when we should, tell people not to use some fonts.
Yeah.
One good example.
Yeah. For this guy, we should say that stop doing what you're doing.
And just change your font at least.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Change the font and, use English. And just refactor it. Start again. So yeah, that's the actual example that we have found. And from all of those situations, we actually came to the conclusion that, well, everyone has their own hell. I found myself in one of those. So yeah, it was a hell. It was hard to cope with all that kind of situation. And luckily, there were good people who heard what we had to say with smart people, and they actually helped us, and we could take a step forward. One of the first things that we actually did, so we installed Scrum. Quite a mechanical way. We didn't try to achieve any values from there at first, so let's put things from Prince2 to actual Scrum. So let's simplify everything for us. So yeah, we started doing that. We had our product owners, we did our teams, projects were turned into products. We did trainings a lot. We trained around 600 people in 1 year, so it was quite intense. We had quite a lot of Scrum Masters, also trainers outside to actually do that. And we entered in a 3-month pilot with 1 business line and with 4 teams. And within the 3 months, we said, okay, successful enough, let's do the organizational wide change. 600 people from one day, from 1st of January 2019, we worked differently. What do you think what happened?
Nothing works. It didn't work.
Why?
Because people don't understand, have this habit of doing it differently.
Yeah, people didn't have the habit. It was new thing for them, and of course, a single training does not give actually what is needed. So, where we got in beginning of 2019. So from bugs open from 2014, it was actually 2015. So we managed to fix some bugs. Spaghettis were still everywhere. We had some automated tests, well, some code reviews, but still no static code analysis. What we did, first of all, we set development standards. Actually, very simple ones. There was just 7 of them. First of all, clean code is a must. Who didn't know needed to learn. Code reviews were a must, and few simple other things that we actually turned into the development standard. How do we work, basically? Well, okay, clean code is a pretty big standard for one sentence, but it was essential, it was needed. You saw the David Copperfield's code, right? So yeah. Other important thing that we did, we had hobby actors who were acting to be developers. Well, we sent them home. Yeah, sounds bad, but sorry. If you don't want to do any kind of quality code, then probably, yeah, you're not the one who should work with us. We put values above all processes. So we changed the direction how we did it. So it is the place, if you know the movie, where you know, Christian Grey starts to understand that he's not in control anymore. That was our moment there. And we actually recruited 33 right-minded developers in 2019. So it was actually a very big kickstart for us to actually start moving with our change. And the values, well, honesty. Yeah, please.
You hired so many people, and you hired 33 out of 100 developers?
No. At that time, we were much smaller. Only 11 were fired. And yeah, 33. If we recruited 33, then at that point we were around 58. Yes, please.
How did you identify that there's a right-minded person? What's the criteria?
Well, first of all, if I'm doing the recruiting, then I always focus on the values. Actually, the same ones that we have here. Values are the most important. We have, or today, and at that time, we already had some of the people who were very right-minded, wanted to teach others. So if I have right-minded persons, then we can teach the technical side. Of course, you need to have a balance. You need to have always more the ones who can do things, and the ones who are learning should be a little more scale. But yeah, first of all, values. I can never teach anybody how to be polite, how to respect somebody, or to have courage. So this is something that a person should have, a developer should have, who we hire, basically. So yeah, for just filling positions, we turned into finding right people to doing the right job. It wasn't enough anymore that you had 3 years in your CV that you have worked with as a developer. You actually had to go through technical interviews, basically. So yeah, that's how we do it, basically. So yeah, please.
When you onboarded new standards, which I understand were like a big and new thing, considering the context, which were like the day-to-day processes that you used, or like any other ways you ensure these standards are actually like consistently followed, and how difficult it was?
For that, we installed Scrum Masters. So who would be as a guard for the process. So we used Scrum, we had the Scrum boards, all the work needed to be visible. So, and the code review, for example, was one of the must go through basically columns that you need to push it through. And of course, magic didn't happen that everyone didn't start doing it day one. Of course, it took time. It took time to actually get it to the point where most of the teams start doing it. And yeah, also the recruitment, those 33 people are the basis that this thing would get going, because each team needed at least 1 or 2 right-minded people to get it going. So yeah, okay. And yes, honesty and respect is actually 2 of the most important values in software development department in Eesti Energia. If you miss those 2, then yeah, you lose your trust basically. Easy as that. Yeah, please.
Quality on the bottom of the line. But it's okay.
Yeah, it's not kind of like importance kind of a sequence here. So.
The question is about courage. Why you even put courage in the list?
Why? It takes courage to actually make some changes. Not kind of courage that you say whatever comes into your mouth. I'll give you an example from the time when I was working with the Ministry of the Interior. I was working as a product owner at that time. And as a new employee, then in the end of the month, they sent me an Excel spreadsheet. I was looking at it, okay, put down all your hours, what you did this month. I hate Excel, for real. I sent back an empty Excel. Nothing happened. Next month, again. 3rd month, again. 4th month, well, end of probation time, I didn't send the Excel anymore. What happened? Where's the Excel? I said, open the last 3 ones. They're empty. I said, yes, they're empty. You didn't look at them. Why do I send you those? So in order to make a change, you need to have courage to do something differently. Because you will have somebody who doesn't like it. I deal with it daily. So yeah, that's why courage is here, actually. So yeah, those are the values that are really important for us, and quality is equally important. Just yeah, quality, writing quality, high quality code, or doing quality output for our customers is learnable or teachable, but the 2 in the top usually are not very much teachable. Even the courage is, you can give some kind of a pat to a person that, okay, do it. I will help you. So yeah, you can take it kind of like this. Okay, we continued our process, and it looked exactly like that. We started to debugging our system. We found our bugs, and we found even bigger problems. Yeah, it was a normal thing. We started chasing little thing, okay, we should change it, and we go, and then, okay, it needs a company-wide change because somebody has written some kind of a process or document that is actually confirmed in the management board. Those things happen. But there was one key element that helped us quite a lot making the changes. Courage, my personal courage, is definitely not enough. Who I need to be thankful for all of this is actually the developers, actually the Scrum Masters, actually all the people that I had there, because they were the ones that came with me, with those changes that we made. And yeah, cooperation, actually doing things together, actually understanding why we're doing that, what is the purpose for us doing those things, that was really important. And we got to the year 2020. We'll skip that. We had the corona. 2021. Well, we had 25 shades of corona at that time. With those 2 years, we all worked from home. So 2020, from 16th of March, all the developers working in Eesti Energia went home working. Some of them hasn't got them back yet. Some of them, I don't know where they are, but they work at least. So yeah, for some it's a surprise. Oh, what you're doing? Oh, I'm in Thailand. Oh, okay, fine. B. So yeah, home working was a normality before Corona happened. And to our surprise, it didn't affect our velocity or delivery. At some point, it actually went up. It was pretty nice. We haven't had yet the fall in there. I'm a little bit afraid of it, that it can come. But yeah, it was quite okay. So yeah, moving on from there to actually 2022, that we actually have today is all teams practicing actually clean code and automated testing, pair programming, hackathons, peer reviews are actually a normality. Learning and teaching is an essential part of an everyday work. Anyone can speak up. There isn't a problem that you can't speak about, whatever you need to discuss. All the teams can make their own working agreements. All teams are responsible for their own products. And we still have loads of problems. Still. Those never seems to end. Although some days the problems are good to deal with. You can see that there's a solution. Some problems are that you see that, okay, it takes now 2 years to actually solve this maybe. But yeah, in all this road, there is one important thing that you need to have. This is trust. Without the trust, nothing wouldn't have happened. I needed to trust all those people that they are doing this. And the level of trust is here that all 105 people are actually without any middle managers. All of those are like formally assigned to me. There isn't any middle managers. There are only scrum masters for the teams. The teams need to take the responsibility themselves. That's quite good. I don't know how long I can keep going up with this, because, you know, if we're growing, then of course you have already quite a lot of people. Quite a lot of people you go to the office for the first time, because the teams are doing actually the recruitments themselves too. All the teams are allowed to recruit. We haven't yet given them the hard job if they need to fire somebody. We don't know what would happen then. But yeah, we have actually reached a very good ground in that sense, that we do work right now well. We do have definitely some bugs, maybe.
From which year?
2019. So we did a bit of a bigger leap, but yeah, we still have some bugs from I don't know what time. So yeah, we still have such things, and yeah, we do have some bad code flying around, but we're trying daily to make it better. Yes, please.
Yeah, can you tell me more about performance review and how do you arrange one-on-ones if everyone formally reports to you?
One-on-ones are actually done by the Scrum Masters. We haven't set kind of a rule that you must do a one-on-one or you must do it weekly or something like this. Its simple rule is that people need to feel that they are cared of, taken care of. And if they do it in a group session, if they do it in the other way, then it is up to the team and the Scrum Master to agree on that. Fact is that everybody needs this personal time to actually talk. So we have one Scrum Master there, and if I'm not mistaken, then you two are working with Einar. So how do you have your one-on-ones? Or do you have one-on-ones?
I haven't had that mine yet.
You haven't had yet?
Soon.
Soon? Well, you can see. Einar is actually daily communicating with them. So yeah, do you miss it? No, you can say it. After that, he will get. So yeah. So important is that people feel that they are valued and they are taken care of in the teams that they're working. Yes.
If you say teams are hiring, they're growing, they probably need to split at some point, and probably there is kind of also this size, some movement between these self-governing teams. How that happens?
Yeah.
Who decides or
well, usually people let know if they want to move. That if they are interested in new challenges, then yes, when we can speak to our teams, then where we know that they are looking basically, and then they can themselves agree like when they are actually doing the shift and so on. When we're doing splitting, then it's a little bit more complicated, as usually we should have a product owner also for the team. So if they're splitting and we don't have the product owner there yet, then yeah, we need to find some kind of solution how to cope in that time, basically. But yeah, it happens. Yes.
Yeah, for those questions regarding the management, performance management, like you mentioned,
Yes.
you have 3 stars, 4 stars. Who gives those stars? How often? If you don't have, engineering management.
Yeah. We don't do performance management. We actually have kind of modified system in a sense that we have this kind of a default 3 stars kind of. Everyone gets a 3 stars. But if there is some kind of an action, some kind of result that the team has actually delivered, then the whole team gets the 4 stars, for example. So we are looking at the delivery of a team, the performance of a team, not a single person. Yes.
Speaking about performance, you said that starting with Corona, there's not damage your efficiency, but how did you upgrade it? How did you understand?
Basically, it was the statistics that Jira actually offers for us. Of course, it might not be the best truth, but yeah, at least in the tendency of how our sprints were going and how much did we deliver to our business, this didn't drop. So, and satisfaction of the business has grown a little bit in a few years' time. So it hasn't done some kind of a magical bump, but we kind of tend to grow. Yes.
Am I correct to say that you had a lot of legacy, hard and soft, old stuff, So if it is true, then what was your approach? I mean, why to fix? If it's old, but it's working, why to fix?
Well, we do have some things that are old and we don't want to touch them. We do have a couple also. So yeah, it is breathing somewhere in the corner. So yeah, we don't touch it. But yeah, we try to live around it and try to migrate from those things, basically. Yes. Clap.
So you mentioned that Teams account is self-governing and there is a Scrum Master, product owner, whatever, and you also do something.
Nothing.
Well, you say it for how,
Yeah.
how long can I do more? But yeah, I mean, how do you check how people feeling? What do they do? Like, are they happy? What do they think? Like, sometimes in one-on-one with lead, you can talk about, well, I feel that the rest of the team is doing maybe wrong, or I feel different. But how do you keep a hand on pulse for such kind of organization?
Most of this work is done by the Scrum Masters. Of course, we have, like I said, some of those problems also. We are not unfamiliar with that. So, yeah, in that kind of cases, we do have kind of a general package, or we are doing surveys that what we should have in a value proposition and so on, so that people could actually speak up. We do have enterprise-wide kind of a satisfaction survey, but we always do also our own department survey. So we dig a little bit deeper in those questionnaires, basically, to get the feeling that what they have there, and it is more detailed, and we do get back their comments that how they feel, what they want change and so on. And it's not done once in a year. We try to do it often. Last year we did it each quarter. So, and also there is daily basis that we get the information from the retrospectives and so on.
So just to clarify, the Scrum Master is not only a person who keeps retros and daily going, but also basically a team lead.
Well, the Scrum Guide says that the Scrum Master is actually a true leader. So,
he feels responsible for team building, right?
Also, the Scrum Guide says that Scrum Master is accountable for team effectiveness. So, actually, that is one place that we are also working quite a lot to actually understand Scrum Master's role in a sense that it is not administrative in a sense that they feel like they are doing kind of handing out the work and so on, but rather than how do they reach with people on a level that they are able to coach the people. So yeah, definitely it's not perfect today, but right now, for example, all those salary negotiations and all that kind of stuff, we have kept away from Scrum Masters. So that Scrum Masters could work with a team daily basis and work on the team on a trust basis and not on a company regulation basis, basically. So yeah, that's how we do it. Yes, back there was, yeah. Yes. Okay. Can you repeat the first question? How many Scrum Masters? 10 Scrum Masters. So 2 per one. Yeah, Scrum Master. 2 teams per Scrum Master. Yes, exactly. And if we are talking about career progression, then we put a lot of effort on the team self-organizing in a sense that we do have training budget that the team is allowed to use themselves how they need it. They can take as a team a training, they can take it individually, and they can kind of discuss themselves that what do they need in a team to progress. We do not have kind of a career ladder that you can climb up, but you can be a better developer, you can develop in your own role a better and better and better each day. Okay. Yes.
What could be done better? And the second question, do you have people abroad?
Yes, we do have people abroad. What can be done better? A lot of things. A lot of things can be done better. So I think there's a huge list that we would like to change, basically. We would like to give more vacation days to our development teams, basically. We would like to give it more chances or like more options for team events, for example. We can do a lot as an enterprise to show our appreciation and caring about our employees. This is definitely something that I am personally worried about and that I'm thinking about. Yes.
What is the main driver for such changes? Because like complicated processes and when code is not turns what business is speaking. For business it's not a problem, right? Complex processes and bad code. But such changes require support from the business, and what's the main driver for this from the business side?
Well, the biggest problem with those complicated processes is that your delivery is quite bad, even shit. So if you don't deliver anything to the business, or let's take an example. We start to develop something, and first 2 months, we spent on delivering everything around it and doing the login window and so on. And then business says how much we have spent. Well, half the money and you can now log in. Well, installing Scrum doesn't change it yet. It is also the values that you need to change so that you start from business value so that your end users can start using your applications as soon as possible. You do have kind of stakeholder groups that you can actually communicate with. So yeah, it requires a lot of change. And the main case for the business, or the main driver for the business to come with this change, is to actually get the better delivery. And well, the quality part of the code, of course, if you tell the business that our code is shit, no, yeah, so it works. They don't care about it, but I do care. I do care a lot. And it is not that it is just a simple value for us. Who of you would like to work on shitty code? Come on, no hands. Everybody would like to work with a code that is written good, understandable, clear, tested, and so on. Everybody likes to do that. I like to create an environment for the developers that it is easy for them to work in. Well, the next slide actually says that programming is not easy, and everybody should be like killed if they say that. But yeah, the environment or the system around the developers should support their work. Yes.
Yeah, when you implemented Scrum, are there parts that you have kind of like avoided implementing, or that you have kind of like done differently from the main canons of Scrum?
We took a kind of way that let's try to do it by the book and then let's see how we modify it. And let's say that today I myself found myself in a situation that I find Scrum in some cases too much of a box. I wouldn't go today with a Scrum with my own development team. If I would be, for example, a product owner, a Scrum master, or a developer, I wouldn't go with Scrum in that sense. It is a good thing to start, of course, but I would push it more to be on a goal basis, a product goal basis. We have a product goal that we need to deliver, because some product goals might take 2 weeks, some might take a week, some might take 2 days. So I would drive it more by the goals. We have a goal, we need to deliver it, we deliver it. We have also retrospectives by some times. We make it a little bit longer to work more thoroughly on those goals that we have delivered in some period of time. And actually, I would not do a Kanban board with to-do, in progress, code review, testing, and all that. I would just leave to-do, in progress, and done. And I would only give a goal to the development team so that the developers themselves actually work up on a daily to 24-hour plan that how they would deliver it. Whether they do their own tasks, whatever they do, doesn't matter. They work on this specific goal that they need to deliver. It actually gives a better focus. It actually takes away that we need to plan for a week rather than we need to deliver this goal. And if this is done, we can take the next one. And in some period of time, for example, within 2 weeks, we will have a retrospective, see what goals we have delivered, what we did well, what went wrong, and so on. So this is where I have reached with that.
What's a typical team composition, like developers, designers, testers, analysts?
Usually we have developers, product owners, Scrum Master. Many teams also have testers, and that's it. We do not have many more roles inside the team, basically. We do have a separate design team who is working on front-end components that we have in general, because we are an enterprise, we need to look everywhere the same. But yeah, this is what the design team is doing basically, but the whole development is actually done by the development team themselves. Okay, yeah.
UX and these things?
Is in the design team. The UX specialists are in the design team, and they are working quite a lot on a service basis. Yeah. Yes.
I just wanted to ask how many, you told us that there are about 105 developers, but what actually the companies are? Because Eesti Energia is a big concern. You have like electricity, I think Enefit is also this light wire provider. Then you have infrastructure. I don't know, do you also mine the...
Yes. Eesti Energia is actually owning the mines, so the shale mines. We are actually mining that. We do have our own 80 kilometers of our own train tracks, basically, which are for the production plants. So we produce electricity, we produce oil, we produce gasoline. We do basically manage the low voltage and the mid voltage network. We do sell electricity, oil, gasoline, we do trade them, and we do sell services like electromobility, like the smart charging stuff and such things. Also solar panels, we do offer financing for those things. And now we are also predicting faults in the network, basically. So yeah, quite a wide spectrum. Yes, please. Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. Diversity is quite important for us. We do have people from many different countries. We have different cultures. You are from Turkey, for example. We do have people from France, for example. We do have people from Finland. I did not do that. So there are different countries that people come actually from, and sorry, I will just push it down again. So we have people from different countries coming in and actually working on a very nice basis. For example, we have a Cuban guy who actually, for his own team and even a little bit wider, does Cuban nights. So they come together, he's doing Cuba Libres and smoking cigars and all that kind of stuff. And it's really nice that they're doing. It enriches so much the people that we have there and so on. So yeah, it is really important for us to have different people with different views. It's not that we only want to hire similar kind of people. No, definitely not. It is valuable. It is valuable. The work ethics, for example, for different cultures is different, and we can also see it influencing others. So yeah, it is. It has an impact, definitely. Yeah. Yes, we have 5 minutes more. If you have any more questions. Yes, please.
Like use vendors, right? As well, external engineers, like external
Yeah.
team. So, like, did you change your approach working with them after all these changes internally?
Yes. Before, it was, as usual, well, the lowest price goes, and yes, you are the winner. Well,
If companies and procurements, like, organized this way on a law, right?
no. No, actually not. Alexander, how did you feel the last code that you actually were looking what was done by one of our previous partners? Exactly. Yeah, actually, in Estonian it is majanduslikult soodsam. It is not the cheapest, but the best value. that you need to actually choose. So we actually changed the way that we do our procurements, that we put our effort 40% on the price and 60% on the quality. Quality might be architecture assignment, quality might be a code assignment, or a technical interview that we conduct, basically. Basically, we have been in court like 5 times because of those things or those assignments. Each time we have one. So yeah, I think it's working pretty well, and we actually have quite good partners now, and we are doing quite a lot of work in order to actually maintain the quality also with the procurement. So yeah, cheapest price doesn't guarantee now anything, basically. Yes.
Not quite lately, but it was like security, public security assumptions don't get updated every new standards. And does it mean that for you it's like a different kind of work? It gives you much more work comparing to like usual stuff?
It definitely gives us some work. So we are still a state-owned company, and we still need to comply with the GDPR. Not that anybody knows what it exactly is, but we still need to do it. And yeah, it still applies for us too.
Not much extra.
We doesn't, for example, if you are talking about, for example, X-Road, then yeah, we are not it's not for us to mandatory to, if we are giving out any kind of service, that we need to have it in the X-Road, basically. This is, for example, something that does not influence us. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the questions. So, yeah.
Thank you, Andri. It was very interesting presentation, a bit more abstract than I expected, but I did had some ideas of what to change at my job. That's another idea. I will consider it. I want to give you a little gift for presenting at this conference, like our traditional pair of socks.
Thank you.
And
should I change it now?
No, but next time maybe.
Yes, thank you.
Like you can never have enough socks. Now there will be like the most important part of any conference, and that's networking, a pause. Like we will have let's say 20-25 minutes pause, in which you can go outside and see if there's anything left of pizza and drinks. And also look around you, find people that you don't know, and try to get acquainted. Like I'm pretty sure all of you speak English. If you're not comfortable with English, try Estonian. Who of you understands Estonian, actually? Awesome. Like 15 people. Who of you understands Russian? Wow, that's unexpected. And to make it complete, who understands English? Not everybody, but good enough. So try to speak to new people, get acquainted, because conferences are like the only place many IT people can meet new people. You have 20 minutes. Good luck. So, welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a great time with pizza and people. And you chose wisely what to eat of those. Let's continue. Now, more technical talk from Artjom Kurapov.
Thanks. Thank you for coming and staying on Tuesday night, basically now. Yeah, so I'll talk about GraphQL. Maybe let's have a show of hands. How many of you use GraphQL in production? 1, 2. Let's say like 5%. So maybe it will be useful. But let's talk about myself. So I'm an engineer principal engineer at Pipedrive. I'm kind of working with these 3 languages we have as a standard stack. Yeah, I've been working on GraphQL for the past 3 years. Basically, that's why I'm coming here to talk about this, because I don't want this legacy to be forgotten. I want to share the knowledge and also like convince you to start using GraphQL, because I'm more of a feeling myself as an evangelist that it's the future. But we had so many talks already in DevClub about GraphQL that there is no point like going too deep on it. Anyway, so I like complexity. I focus on kind of performance and scalability, architecture in general. I'm an open source maintainer. I like image recognition and then beekeeping. So some of the code that will be in this talk is available in this open source project that I'm working on. Because I can't like disclose Pipedrive code, but I'm doing something similar in the open source version. So the agenda for today is kind of, I tried to break it down into these 5 big steps. So let's keep questions until end of every section, and then I can kind of basically control this, how many questions we have, and move on. So roughly it should take maybe 50 minutes. And yeah, you can expect the complexity to grow by the end. So it may be, like I may repeat some of these topics. So Pipedrive is a like Estonian unicorn. We have around 1,000 employees. So we have over 100,000 clients. So companies that pay us money. We have over 400 engineers out of that 1,000. We're spread around 10 offices. We're trying to be like agile, and if you like try to divide, then 30 teams, that's around 10 or more engineers per team. We are like high load. We're hosted in multiple regions. We'll have a lot of microservices and libraries to support those microservices. And basically, the product that we offer is focused on sales. So if you have a complex sales process, then usually you have this so-called funnel. So if you deal, for example, with real estate, or if you're HR that finds candidates, then usually you have something in this left column. You add so-called leads or deals, and then you try to move them across the funnel. So you organize meetings, you call people, you create activities, and you tie notes to it. You have email synchronization, calendar synchronization, automations, all kind of functionality, and then you can have custom filtering. So it's pretty advanced in terms of features. And but I'll talk about this kind of narrow functionality that goes through all of the app, and that's what I could call like data synchronization or asynchronous events. So you have multiple tabs open or multiple users looking at some view, and it should synchronize. So why you should care about this in the first place. So as a business owner, let's say. So on the left is what I see as a developer. So I see, okay, it's intuitive user experience. It's interactive, meaning I get some feedback of the process. And also the data is basically synced to another device or another tab. But it also gives these main values to the end client, and on the right, how it kind of impacts the business. So if I, as a client, trust the app, I'll try to use it more compared to some competitor. So how do you usually solve this in other projects? So there is a pusher, software as a service. There is LiveBlocks. There is Firebase, which is also kind of a database in the cloud, basically, which Google owns. And of course, you can build a custom service, which Pipedrive did over like 10 years ago. So this is a very simplistic overview of the, let's say, typical architecture of some product which manages state in the database. And well, basically you have some front end, you have a gateway, you have some kind of product service which knows about business logic and stores it in the database. And after it's done doing that, it usually kind of creates a synchronous event in the queue, which other services use it. And in our case, we have a service called socket queue, which consumes those events and kind of propagates them to the front end. So we have this feedback loop. So that's the intro part. Any questions so far?
Why RabbitMQ or not Kafka, for example?
Yeah, good question. That's just historical reasons. It was created over like 10 years ago. Right now, we're moving away from RabbitMQ actually. So yeah. So it's I'd say 80% or something like that. The amount of traffic is moved over to Kafka.
And socket queue will still stay?
For now, yeah, it still exists. It now reads Kafka. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, so why GraphQL in the first place? I won't repeat the theory, but basically we had same problems other companies did. So with REST, when I joined Pipedrive, I was part of the marketplace team, which owned this developers portal, and this is API reference. So you can track, you can see documentation for a specific endpoint. In this case, if you want to get some filter entity, then this is the response we provide. This is an example, basically. And the problem is we use Swagger, which is part of this Open API initiative, and it doesn't, well, this example, it shows the data, but it doesn't show the actual types. And the same problem with if you want to create a filter entity, then we actually don't show you the like nesting or this. This is not good enough, in my opinion, that we try to explain what can be the content of this conditions object, but we do it by basically creating a huge comment. And it's not, the Swagger itself is not sufficient enough. You need to manually synchronize API with this description unless you use something like Happy. So that, like for REST, it seemed like a problem. So another problem, of course, is overfetching. We had that. So if you ask for deals, we try to add extra objects that deal can reference. Underfetching, so we ask, when we load an app, we ask for so many API endpoints that it becomes a problem that we're like ping-ponging back and forth until the app actually loads. So I see that as like a loss in performance. It takes maybe 5 seconds to load an app. It would be nice to somehow merge those requests together so that you don't do this back and forth transport, decoding the response, and then asking for a dependent data. And that's what typically engineers started to do. They started to denormalize the REST endpoint, so you no longer deal with a single resource. You combine it into a single API that PHP serves and returns 20 different entities. And then as you try to maintain it, you encounter issues like, well, would be nice to get only one property like company information and not load, I don't know, currencies or stages for a specific front-end app. For example, we had Gmail integrations or mobile apps. So this endpoint itself is served by PHP, which, well, it's not asynchronous, so we don't parallelize those data loading those functions. So we load them sequentially, and that, of course, is inefficient. And then as you try to like generalize this API composition, you figure out that, well, you need to handle errors somehow. What if one of those entities gets loaded from the database and the database is not accessible? Or it makes internal API request and that API is not accessible. So how do you handle errors? What happens if you want to exclude some of those things? So typical things for why GraphQL is needed. And of course, it was not this single endpoint. We had multiple such API composition endpoints, which seem like inefficient because you need to now maintain all of them. They duplicate, let's say, user data or company data, whereas it's already available. So we figured 3 years ago that let's make it more efficient. We had a team, and we thought, well, let's add GraphQL here. And we used Apollo Federation. Basically, if you're not familiar with GraphQL that much, you can think of GraphQL. You can start as a monolith service and just keep adding those manual API handling code like you did before with this approach. It's just instead it will be some GraphQL response. But what Apollo did, they provided a gateway which we can use, and they provided automatic query planner built in, so that if you have a couple of services, in our case Monograph and Identity, they register their schema, and then the gateway knows which service to call if a front-end asks for that. And it's done kind of automatically, either sequentially or in parallel or both, depending on your request. So it's kind of magical and cool. So you have automatic API composition without any hard coding, and you can develop these services sort of by different teams in parallel as well. Everything is great. And then the response gets merged also automatically and returned to you. So this is how the schema registry looks like, which we have built during that mission. You can register schema, you can see it change in time. You can track the usage of individual properties, and you can also track which client used that property. So compared to REST, now you can see that mobile app used, let's say, username. And if you want to change that property, you can go to mobile team and ask them to first start using a new property, and then deprecate the property you want to remove. So we open sourced this schema registry service. We created a library which now also protects the gateway, because you don't want to create nested, or you don't want to accept very complex queries in the gateway. You don't want recursion. You don't want huge queries which list for, I don't know, 10,000 deals, for example. So this library allows some complexity limits. It's also open source. And by the end of this GraphQL introduction mission, we had a UI where you could build the query you need. We created a graph, so the schema or supergraph, and the mission got some performance boost, because instead of calling a synchronous PHP request endpoint, we started to hit a more efficient monograph service, which went to memcache, basically. So instead of 400 milliseconds, it took maybe 50 milliseconds for this round trip, and we had cache hit ratio of over 80%. So it seemed efficient and good, but what about subscriptions, events that I'm about to talk about? We didn't do anything about that. So that's the end of the queries. Any questions? Yes?
Yes. You described the situation when you have front-end endpoints and a number of endpoints grows and you need more information. I think it's pretty, every company has this problem.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side, only 5% of us use GraphQL.
Mm-hmm.
How much did it cost to you to change to it?
How much did it cost us to switch to GraphQL?
Yeah.
Well, the front-end part was relatively simple, because previously it was making single REST API call to get this initial page or initial user information, and then it was kind of distributing the data in backbone models and so on. So it was quite straightforward to change it on the front end. On the back end, that was kind of hard, because you had this huge PHP endpoint, and there was no, like, it's internal request. There is no documentation. You need to slice it up into chunks, and then sort of move schema into other services if they are responsible for. So it requires a refactoring, which, well, after 2 years, we eventually dropped that endpoint because it was used in other like mobile clients as well. But I'd say the whole mission took 2 or 3 months, and it was four guys, 4 developers working on this. But yeah, we basically introduced this new layer that everyone could use. I don't know if that answers the question.
I still need to ask it, right?
Yep.
Because you mentioned it multiple times.
Yes.
Maybe the problem is in PHP. You know, it's like all these slow synchronous PHP, all these slows, and therefore we optimize it through fancy things.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Python can also be inefficient.
Well, it's a single process, right? So, like, so it's not.
Yes. Maybe. Yeah, I'm already not fan of PHP. I've already converted, so I'm forgetting my old beliefs. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned that you've created 2 open source libraries, and before that you mentioned that you installed GraphQL with help of Apollo something.
Yes.
Could you elaborate what Apollo is?
Yeah, so this Apollo is a US company which provides open source code for the gateway. But as I understand, they also provide a cloud solution for this schema storage, which also includes, well, pretty much everything here, but more advanced. And well, you need to pay for it, and you store the schema in the cloud. There are other alternatives. There is a GraphQL Hive by the Guild, which is a team of like GraphQL enthusiasts. So yeah, Apollo does a good job of developing both backend and frontend. So GraphQL client, that's one of the most popular ones. Yes.
You described the problem that when, let's say, some front-end needs some parts and some front-end needs different parts, and how to send them the required thing. But what if there is also a kind of like rights question, like one kind of user can get some part of this data, other, where do you match kind of like property level rights and these?
Yeah, good question. I didn't mention that, and I'll give you a present for this good question. So access control, yeah, is very important, and we fix it, or we solve it in two ways. That so we have this gateway, which is typically for REST endpoints, and for REST endpoints we have a general kind of solution that, let's say, deals endpoint can be accessed if user has sales suite. So if he has access to specific menu, that menu is basically tied to some of these REST endpoints. But GraphQL is different because it gives access to any suite. It's more generic. So we've built into the schema this mapping. So when you describe your schema, let's say a user, then we can add to a specific property who can access this field. So we add a custom directive. That's one of the GraphQL features. We add a custom directive which says that this can be accessed by user who has sales suite, which is kind of a generic thing. But once you go deeper into actual request, so you pass this initial check, then you can have individual permissions. For example, you can see one deal, but you cannot see another deal. Then it is managed in one of these product services, because they will query permissions service, which stores this mapping per entity. That's how we solve that.
Yeah, I have one question. So you mentioned that you actually reduce the time of a query, like all queries, from 5 seconds to 500 milliseconds or something like that. And it seemed that that was actually due to GraphQL, but you mentioned that you also added cache, like memcache. Did you have memcache in the beginning on the PHP app or not?
Okay, so to clarify numbers, so the endpoint for that user information loading took maybe 400 milliseconds, and that was basically this direct call, REST API call. And then we added a bunch of services here, which, of course, they add more latency because you need extra network hops. But in this monograph service, we add memcaching. So PHP has memcache as well, but now this monograph caches entire PHP response, and then PHP breaks the cache. So there is some complexity there. They can be seen as a single service for now. I hope in the future we will break down the monolith entirely, and they will be more like these slim services like identity, which control the data. So yeah, we added caching this into this monograph, which is the memcache itself is wrapped in MacRouter, and it scales horizontally, so it can store a lot of data, and it's kind of performant. Yeah, so that's how we improve the performance. If that answers the question.
Yeah, so the question was that like it was 5 seconds, and it seemed that this time reduction was mainly due to due to the fact that you added GraphQL.
Yeah, I don't have proofs, let's say.
It seemed that it was actually due to cache mostly.
Yes,
right?
yes. It's mostly due to cache, and because previously it was single request, and now this new service that we added, it started to make parallel requests. Okay. So PHP kind of started to, it got more requests, but they were smaller basically. So we could, and we added caching on top of that, so it was in general faster. That's the solution. Okay, let's move on to subscriptions. So why subscriptions? One of the problems after the mission was one of the clients contacted support and says, why is Pipedrive app consuming 80 gigabytes of traffic per day for our company? And that kind of seemed suspicious, so we started to investigate, and eventually we fixed this issue in SocketQ. We started to compress traffic, but it was like a tiny bell saying, well, maybe we do something inefficiently. So if you look in the network tab of WebSockets, so this is a SocketQ traffic basically, you can see things like person updated and a bunch of these events. So one of those problems is that we also don't know what exactly is in this event. We kind of don't document it, pretty much similar to REST API. So we could have added Swagger here, but who knows? Maybe in some cases there are more entities or some more properties. In some there are less, and it's also different. Different entities are transferred, so not only person. We just funnel all of possible events to the front end, and this happens whenever you have some integration or you make a bulk API change. So let's say you have 10,000 deals, you click select all deals, and you move them into another pipeline, or you change something about them. So that generates basically 10,000 changes that go to the front end, and now browser needs to kind of do something with that. So it needs to store it in a backbone model, maybe trigger some re-rendering. It becomes like a performance problem for the front end as well. And another problem is scalability. So if you look at the network request, there is this number. And that means that our clients, because we have so many of them, are sharded, and the traffic is distributed into separate queues, and app instances. So we have a fixed number of SocketQ instances and fixed number of queues. So whenever we want to scale, we need to basically change the entire number and change entire sharding mechanism. We need to double, for example, amount of queues and at the same time amount of SocketQ instances. And this brings also another problem, that if there is one client that has integration and this integration generates so many events, it can affect another client because, well, the app instance is so busy processing all of those things for one of the client. And you can see it in Grafana. For one of the clients, you have CPU spike compared to others. It's like 4 times higher. So sometimes this even caused us a problem with health checks. So our SocketQ instances would basically be unhealthy, and we would get pinged in the middle of the night that in the US somebody just plays around with some integration. So other problems, we used RabbitMQ, and RabbitMQ basically stores events in memory, and it's not only for API events. Other things like automations also used RabbitMQ, and luckily we got them separated. But imagine if one of the services doesn't consume messages from the queue, it starts to grow to, let's say, 2 million, and then RabbitMQ is out of memory. Infra has to restart the instance, and you lose data. So it's a reliability problem. And the same thing if, just from the client perspective, he closes a laptop, his WebSocket gets disconnected. Now he opens again the app, and well, this state is not updated. He sees some old state. Yeah, you may get WebSocket reconnected, but there is nothing gets transferred which happened meanwhile. So it may seem like a user experience problem, but in reality it's more of a architecture problem that we do not resync all of this intermediate state of events. So at some point I created a proof of concept that let's try GraphQL subscriptions. I used some old subscription transport library, just hooked to Kafka, and well, I got all of the events from all companies in test environment, and that seemed to work. So I pitched a mission. We have a mission framework in Pipedrive, so we had 4 engineers in total for, again, 3 months of summer, and we wanted to kind of test how we can change this and move it into production. So we wanted to have authentication, because I was not sure how that's going to play out with GraphQL. Basic idea is that we want to move this filtering from the front end to the back end, so that we get only the updates where we want. And we want, so we want to provide to the backend how we want to filter all of that. So by entity, by user, by company, that kind of stuff. And then we would like to have more enrichment, because with API events, the event structure is it's not clear, but it includes a lot of things like permissions. But in this new vision, we also want to get more data if needed. So enrichment is important. And yeah, we want to handle disconnects. We want to test that I can subscribe to multiple things from a single view. We want to like release it in production, test scalability, performance, and so on. And we tried 2 frameworks in Go, but we ended up still with this solution by Apollo, where Mandy is one of the solution architects. She was explaining how we can do enrichment. And we also use this GraphQL.EE library by Denis that maintains it. And yeah, that became a new standard. So any questions so far on the kind of mission preparation?
So how bad network is handled? Is it some automatic solution in this Apollo and GraphQL.EE?
Yeah, the disconnect is handled by GraphQL.EE. It automatically reconnects, so pretty much similar to what we had before. But for this case of missing state, we have a feature of live updates. I'll show a little bit about it in the future, but it's not a, let's say, big big feature that we use at the moment. It's like possible, but I'll show it in the next slides.
This case with closing laptop.
Yes. So with it's called live query, you can when you reconnect, you will also fetch the current state, and then automatically subscribe to follow-up events. That's how we solve the state resynchronization. Sorry.
Live query is out of the box feature, or you had to implement it?
That we had to implement it, yeah. Okay, let's move on to schema. So this is how it roughly looks like when I just drag a deal I get a result here. So this is some UI graphical where I describe what exactly I want to receive, and I subscribe to specific deal, and then when I move it, I get pretty much the same thing that I subscribe to. And let's go a bit in depth about the schema. So if you design the schema yourself, that may be important for you to consider. So those events that we transport to the front end, we separate them into pieces. So one of the things is raw events. That's the event that originates from Kafka, or if it would have been RabbitMQ, that's basically what was stored in that queue or event bus. We do some camel case remapping. We add extra permission checks, but this is by far the most reliable source of the data. Another thing that we added was the delta. It was mostly because frontend really asked for, and that implies that our Kafka event schema must contain the change. So something that was before and something that is now. This is useful mostly for the change type of events. If you delete or if you add something, there is not much benefit in there. But if you do some changes, you can see a specific property that was changed. So you, in the front end, can update a single property in a single deal by ID. You don't need to update entire object. So another thing is, if you design the schema, what may be important is like separating events into a universal event, which is just easier to subscribe to, and it also makes sense if the order of events is important. If you add a deal, then you change it, and then you delete it, then this universal type makes kind of more sense because they will be delivered in the correct order. Whereas if you separate them into multiple kind of action-specific or domain-driven events, then there is no kind of guarantee that if you subscribe to multiple different things, that they will come in chronological order as well. Yeah, so that's the interesting part of that. Then the kind of most important and feature-rich thing is the enrichment. So what we do is we kind of query the gateway. So we get the Kafka event, then we see the ID of the entity, for example, a deal ID, and then we make requests to enrich it. And that the content of what exactly do you want to get from the backend depends on what you exactly subscribe to. So yeah, the query is hard-coded, and it's useful if you have just some React view. You can not only subscribe to things in the Kafka event, but you can ask for deal creator, so some user, and then or for deal pipeline. So it can be kind of nested hierarchical thing, and it's useful because this doesn't require frontend to do any querying. You just subscribe to the data, and then the backend will do enrichment, basically querying internally without you like coding any logic on the front end. So it's cool. And then the live queries that I mentioned before, we just add this parameter, and then we subscribe to things. So this should give us it should immediately return the deal title and the creator name, and then it should subscribe to deal changes for this specific ID. And then whenever deal with this ID changes, it will also give us like the updated state.
Is that what you write on the front end?
Yeah, this is the front-end subscription.
And does it matter which framework front-end uses? Is it React or other Angular?
No, not really. Like we used Apollo client, which allows and provides these subscriptions. Nowadays we use Relay, so I think it's pretty much the same. This logic of first fetching data and then resubscribing, that's hard-coded in our service, and it uses some async iterator magic, which like I'll link in the blog post, which will be in the end, but that should work fine. Yeah. So, any questions so far? Yes.
So one of the biggest problems I see with GraphQL myself is like in a traditional, let's say, not GraphQL way, then you have a response, it fetched into some entities, right? Like for example in TypeScript things, and every engineer, if they extend the functionality, they know, like, I have these properties, I can work with them, they have content, right? Because I have it. And now with GraphQL, sometimes you have no idea what types of values you have. Or even you start creating DTO like these data transfer objects, right? Which are exactly matching your GraphQL subscription model. And then you have tons of these objects, like thousands of these objects, because one has like, okay, I have person, then only these fields, and then deals, only that fields, and then these deals, like you describe your tree structure really, really precisely, but like what you want to GraphQL. Or you still use these common objects, common domain objects, but then other engineers should dive into like to the method of subscription and understand, okay, which fields I have, which fields I don't have. And then they start to either add these fields or create their own subscriptions. And then again, you have either zoo of subscriptions and these GraphQL queries, or you end up to the same situation then because you want to generalize things. So one person says, I need 2 fields out of 10. Now said, like, I need 2 fields, 3 fields, and I will add this field. And then you add them back, and by the end of the day, your GraphQL actually reflecting your domain model. Was it clear? No?
No. What is the question?
The question is, what do you do about it? Like, is actually, like, do you go the way like every engineer is creating their own, like if you want to create something, if there are some fields they don't have in existing GraphQL query, either they add it or we should create their own GraphQL queries.
Well, if I understood the question correctly, it's about the schema.
Yes,
how do we
schema, yes.
How do we change the schema? So it's a collaboration between front-end and back-end. Front-end wants some properties that back-end doesn't provide yet. You ask them to provide it, and then eventually you should have pretty normalized schema in GraphQL, which reflects both like the database or potential business properties that, I don't know, you concatenate to fields. That's the product of your service.
So because you extend front-end, right? Okay, I'll try differently. So you extend front-end functionality. Like when you introduce first GraphQL subscription, you have really limited fields, right? Like, for example, to display this page, I only need 2 fields, right? Then you extend functionality and you add more fields and you add more fields because you want to display, you want to build logic, like, and so on. And then you end up that your GraphQL query looks exactly the same way as there is no GraphQL, right? Because like one engineer needs 2 fields, another engineer needs 5 fields, third engineer needs 7 fields, and then by the end of the day, you fetch all these things plus all this GraphQL magic on top of that.
So your question is more about schema design, and that is, again, that's a collaboration. You need to you shouldn't cram all properties into a single type or something. You need to separate them. You need to normalize them and split them up, reference them. You need to think about hierarchy. Do you create a separate user because that's what deal creator is actually referencing? And then do I split up the user into multiple types? Do they like extend one another from different services? So that's a hard thing, and sometimes it's more of an organizational problem where one service kind of extends another type, yeah, and you eventually want to merge them together, but they are maintained by different teams, and yeah, it's not an easy solution. So with subscriptions, I can say only that it would be good if you design the schema of subscriptions in such a way that it's clear that event is event. So you should probably have a suffix in the end that deal changed, deal added. You can immediately understand that you will get an event back, and then something nested inside of it is actually going to be joined from the kind of query namespace. So the stuff inside is actually enrichment. Yeah. Yes.
So this single subscription, it seems that it is already kind of supported in Elasticsearch. Like, what about your database? What do you use for database, and does it have this like subscription capabilities, or you have built them from scratch?
Honestly, I don't know what Elastic provides. What you mean in terms of subscriptions, but for these we just use Kafka at the moment. So I'll go into more depth in the code part. I think that will, yeah, the architecture part. So we just use MySQL. Yeah, we use Elastic in terms of storage, but streaming and these things are kind of temporary entities that get transferred through Kafka, basically. So okay, I'll already move into architecture if that's okay. So yeah, we just pick the data from Kafka. So the monolith or other services write to Kafka, and the entity itself is already normalized, so it's very slim. Then we, during our mission, created the worker in Go, which reads that, does permission checks, and enriches the event. Then we store it into Redis PubSub, and then we have a GraphQL subscription service which kind of streams events to the front end. So this is the enrichment part here. So if we see that the front end asks for something, we do the enrichment. So in Go, we do permission check. So we see that, let's say, deal 1, 2, 3, we don't know who can see it. So we ask a permission service, we get a list of users, and then we pass it along to this further steps. And Redis PubSub here acts as a kind of multiplexer or router between multiple entities, multiple users. It's sort of like RabbitMQ, except that it doesn't store anything for long term. It's temporary. You get publisher publishing something and subscriber getting the data.
Why do you have both Redis and Kafka?
Well, Kafka is kind of long-term, let's say, storage. So events, yeah, we want to get that data as fast as possible and deliver it to the front end. But at the same time, if something happens to this infrastructure, then we still want to have some storage. So it can, I don't know, take a week. The retention policy is there for Kafka. And it's sort of more reliable that, yeah, if this whole piece comes up, it will get delivered eventually.
Why didn't Redis support here?
So that's mostly for the scalability. So here, if I go into scalability, we shard like Kafka events. We have different partitions basically. So we have different topics, but every topic is also partitioned into, I don't know, 30 or more partitions because of 100,000 companies that we have, and they're spread around different regions. So basically events get consumed by a specific worker, and we can scale these workers up to amount of partitions we have. So this is, I don't know, 30 instances we can have here, and then this worker does permission check and stores the result into Redis PubSub, or, well, it's Redis Sentinel, so more reliable. And we store it in a specific channel. I'll go into that in the next slide. But yeah, this part here, the GraphQL subscriptions can scale pretty well. So horizontally, we can add much more instances, and they deal with actual WebSocket connections. They disconnect users if needed, and they kind of maintain open connection. So.
Yeah, good question. So do you have any other consumers of this Kafka stream, or
yes.
only? Okay.
Yes, that's also one of the. I don't remember all of the answers, but basically, yeah, Kafka gets consumed not only by the front end, by other services as well, and yeah, they have their own consumer groups and so on.
So messages in Kafka are not personalized for.
Yeah, not only for this GraphQL subscriptions.
Just event log for database, for example, like here.
Yes, something like that. Yeah, log of all changes or deal creations or whatever we want to store. So yeah, in the future, this could be improved such that we could, from the front end, from the GraphQL subscriptions part, we could like return the state of who's actually connected to these workers, and then workers could basically filter out users that are not connected at all to our backend, and kind of drop the data so that it even doesn't reach the Redis, because in this architecture, Redis is one of the weakest spots. It's like a single point of failure if it needs to basically manage publishers to subscribers all the time, and it's CPU heavy. Even though it's it consumes multiple CPUs, it's efficient, but still, yeah. So this is the yes.
I'm just not sure if you moved to asking questions on the go.
I'll reach at the end, and then we can maybe I'll answer beforehand. So where exactly do we put those messages is in the Redis PubSub. We create channel something like this. So we have a company ID, entity, and then entity ID. So this channel can be whatever we want, as long as it's kind of short enough and you can subscribe and route data efficiently to match. Well, it's like regex. I could match specific company events or specific company deals or activities, whatever I want. And then if I want to subscribe to specific deal ID here as well. So I could get only changes or deletions. If I need it, I can extend this channel name even further. Yeah. And by the end of the mission, we tested it in production, released it to all clients. It didn't affect any UI, but we tested that we can subscribe from basically all live customers to our service, and it scales. The time was here around 2 seconds for P90. We had issues with memory. So in the graph, you can see how like the app instance had, let's say, 20,000 connections, and then suddenly it dropped. And that was because of our Node.js memory, which we eventually configured and solved this, so it's kind of stable now. And at peak, we had for one entity, so for deals, for example, just for the perspective that around 200 events per second. And yeah, that's the performance testing. And we've built into various limitations so that you cannot abuse our subscription service. We kind of limit on how many entities you can subscribe to. For example, if you open deal pipeline view and there are hundreds of deals, you can ask, well, I want to listen to all of those 100 deals and those title changes, for example. So we want to avoid you breaking our backend if you start to scroll down and suddenly now our front end starts to unsubscribe and resubscribe and then do this all the time. We kind of want to throttle that part, and we also want to limit our backend so that even if there is some malicious hacker trying to subscribe to all possible entities, at the same time we will stop him. So we also have enrichment request timeouts. We have periodically, if you were connected for too long, we will also drop your connection. And we also disconnect you on logout, or if your permission changes, kind of that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's the end of the architecture. If you had, yeah.
Slide is red and blue arrows. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify. So this GraphQL subscription worker deals with permission stuff, right? So it kind of automatically pre-creates channels for each company, each user in Redis?
Yes, yes.
So you kind of using predefined permission set at some moment, because you also mentioned disconnect and permission change. So you don't evaluate permissions dynamically, right?
So I think we have two parts where we check permissions. So in the subscription worker, yeah, we make, I think, 10 parallel requests. So we consume entities from the Kafka topic, and then it's not consumed one by one, it's bulk consumption. And then we take 10 events, do parallel 10 requests, get their permissions, enrich the event. So we put IDs of users into the event itself. We pass along it to subscriptions, which then does the matching. Like, can the connected user see this event? So is he matching that ID or not? And if you're not one in that permitted list, then we don't send you anything, basically.
Do you have to invalidate this cache somehow, like Redis using their state?
Do we have to invalidate the... No, there is nothing stored in the Redis. Redis is just...
But
yes.
There is still potentially, there is a throughput. You mentioned the CPU is weakest.
Mm-hmm.
So you can potentially get lots of stuff in somewhere in between end user and Kafka pipe.
I don't think that there will be any kind of delay there. If you have so many events coming in that Redis will, there is no memory in Redis PubSub as I understand the architecture. It won't store those events. It will basically either lose them or it will deliver it to the subscribed services. So that's kind of the efficient part. The disadvantage is that it consumes a lot of CPU, that it needs to match those consumers and producers, because a consumer can subscribe to regex, so you can subscribe to all deals of a specific company, or theoretically you can subscribe to everything, but the whole point of GraphQL subscriptions is the efficiency of this filtering.
Do you understand correctly that Pipedrive rating domain, deals and stuff, is not related to some huge amount of transactions happening? You cannot get flood with gazillion of deals changing at the same moment, real gazillion.
Well, theoretically not, because we have rate limiters for like HTTP traffic, and we build also internal rate limiters. And even for bulk API changes, we also have queues that, like theoretically, you shouldn't create huge spikes, but of course there are like risks that you could do import or bulk API change or do it at the same time. That eventually, for some company, you can get a pretty big load. Yes.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, can some data contain, sensitive information, and is it encrypted between client and backend? How that happens?
Well, good question. I think it's user's data. So whatever he puts in let's say deal title or person, contact information, emails, phones, he can do whatever he wants.
But is it encrypted, like between backend? Is it like going through?
It is. No, it's not encrypted per se. It uses secure WebSocket, so VSS.
Okay, so they're encrypted by certificate or something?
Yes. Anyone else?
On mobile, you can do similar thing or not?
No, we rolled out the GraphQL subscriptions a year ago. I think for mobile it wouldn't be as viable or efficient because mobile uses some custom PubSubs or like own network or event transport through Apple or Google. I'm not sure.
So mobile is not hitting the same?
No, not well, at least not yet. Maybe in the future. Okay, anyone else? No?
Yes. Just for the Redis instances, what is their type?
Type?
Yeah, like how much memory and So do you use AWS or some other cloud provider?
Well, for infrastructure, I think we will use AWS. Right now it's Rackspace. And for memory and CPU, I'm not sure. I think Redis was in hundreds of megabytes, the consumption. But I'm not sure. I'm not part of the infra that manages the Redis Sentinel itself. I think it's okay for now. They do ping us periodically about CPU, but let's move on to more important part of the code. So the transport, GraphQL itself is transport agnostic, so you can decide how exactly it gets transferred. We don't want to consider long polling or long polling. Then we kind of end up with either SSE or WebSockets. I know there is also RSocket, which Java people tend to promote. But anyway, SSE, pretty simple, looks like this. WebSocket is seems more chaotic, but basically, with SSE, it seems simple. You establish HTTP connection, and then it's like long polling, but with long polling, you used to close the connection. With SSE, you just don't close the connection when you send the data. So it's just JSON with like new line breaks, and you send those events to the front end. There are some limitations, like HTTP1 doesn't like too many connections. So usually this SSE is for the cases you want to stream deals, for example, you know what exactly you're streaming. But well, we went with WebSocket because previously we used WebSocket as well, and it seemed kind of more safe because in SSE there is a GraphQL SSE library that became available just recently, and with WebSockets there was already a library that kind of supported GraphQL transport. And I'm kind of okay with WebSockets. And then when you go into WebSocket protocol, then you see that you can actually implement whatever you want in WebSockets. So one of them was the Apollo's subscriptions transport VS library, or it's kind of a protocol, but it's dead now. So there is the GraphQL VS as a de facto standard now. And the cool thing that it allows also queries and mutations over WebSockets. So if you really want to make it cool and efficient, you can ask data over WebSockets as well. We didn't go that path, but just mostly because we didn't want to bet everything on WebSocket. It would be too much of a single point of failure. And yeah, the GraphQL VS is cool because it has a very good documentation. It supports both front-end and back-end, so it's kind of seamless and a lot of examples. The GraphQL itself in React looks like this. You just use a React hook and you provide the data you want to receive for a specific ID. And when you get the data, it will automatically re-render. And on the back end, this GraphQL VS looks something like this. So in here, I use both Express and GraphQL VS. So I instantiate some WebSocket server. And then this use server function is the kind of what GraphQL VS provides. So you have a bunch of hooks. And so whenever someone connects to you over WebSocket, you have onConnect. And well, it's all pretty logical. So if you want to do something simple, just ask for hello world in different languages. You can use a generator function in JavaScript. Looks something like this with the fancy star. I didn't see anyone using yields actually, but wow, I'm just listing possibilities here. So a more realistic thing is something with a sync iterator and then promises. So in here, I just iterate over numbers. It looks kind of more complex, but basically what you need to do is, so you define a schema on top, and then for resolver function, you provide a sync iterator. So that's just a pattern for traversing unknown structure, and you get this next function called all the time, and inside it's just every second generates you some incremented value, and when it reaches the end, yeah, you get this done true, and it ends the stream. And another example is like coming closer to our architecture to finish the whole talk is about this pub/sub. So if I want to display a time, I can write a more simple thing, like I have pub/sub and I subscribe to some time channel. And over here, I have some ticker which publishes time to this pub/sub channel. So it seems kind of simple. Now, what you usually do is you put this publishing into a mutation, and when you change, let's say, some entity, you will also trigger the subscription. But this only works if you have only one app instance, and if you want to use a real-world example, you'll have a lot of app instances to scale, so this won't work for your case, and you need to kind of detach mutation from subscription. That's where Redis comes in. So there is the GraphQL Redis subscriptions, and then you instantiate this Redis pub/sub, and finally, one of the last slides, yeah, when you create that GraphQL VS, you use these hooks and you pass Redis pub/sub instance there, and you can do other checks. So you can set data sources for enrichment, and you can check connection limits. Yeah, and eventually in the subscribe handler, you will deal with actual data. So one of the last slides again, this is the same Redis resolver function, but now we have this with filter wrapper function. So instead of async iterator, which loads the data from memory, we load it from Redis, and this is the channels I was talking about. Yeah, you can add extra checks to do permission checks. You can do add into this resolver function like internal request to get enriched data, and this is the main feature that allows us to build what enriched and scalable GraphQL subscriptions. So if you want to have more info, this is the original blog post about how we move to GraphQL, and the more issues are described here. And this is the article about the actual subscriptions. And there are also these GitHub repos where I tried to post all of the code examples, including I'm working on Go part, how I publish actually to PubSub. Yes?
Just to clarify alternatives, if GraphQL wouldn't exist, what will be your next option?
If GraphQL would exist? Would not exist? That's a good question. Well, you would have to reinvent GraphQL. So if we go back to just regular queries and mutations, yeah, the main problem we want to solve is API composition. So how do I ask for various data? So let's say I have 10 REST API calls and I want to squish them together. What is the notation? Do I just send to the backend, here are the URLs? Or do I start to go into depth for every URL and say that, okay, for this URL, I want only one field?
You can make some custom aggregator and do the same.
Yes. Yes, well, so you could do that, yeah.
Returns data you are subscribed in a custom way through this socket.
Yes,
well.
You could do all of that. Just you'll reinvent the wheel, and with GraphQL you already have tons of code that gives you all of these possibilities. So
there is not any ready solution comparable to this technology?
With API composition, not that I know of. There are like just architectural approaches. So either you go RPC route, so there is tRPC, gRPC, XML RPC, or you go a REST approach. So there is JSON API, I think, or CAML. So it's not so popular, I'd say. Yes?
Is this GraphQL N+1 problem, does it still exist? Did you have to solve it somehow?
Yeah, that comes naturally when you start to use GraphQL. You encounter that, okay, now I need to fetch deals in bulk, for example, and you start to use data loader. There are discussions in the community how to improve this. I don't remember the library name, but yeah, it's more about resolver functions and how they get called.
So you have to write some custom resolvers, use data loaders.
Yeah.
Or do you try to avoid, maybe?
No, you typically use a data loader, so you need to define how those IDs get kind of smushed together and which endpoint will get called.
Can you describe what is the N+1 problem?
Yeah, sure. N+1 problem is when when you ask for, let's say, deals, and then for every deal you want to also include a user or a creator. So you could ask for those deals from a database easily, and you get 100 deals. But now GraphQL doesn't know how do I actually join those users.
Isn't what you have with the enrich? Isn't enrich solves that problem?
No, this enrichment is for subscriptions. We're talking about queries, so more fundamental part.
I thought enrichment actually catches those additional entities and stitches them together.
Enrichment, yes, in a way. When you query the gateway here in enrichment, yeah, you can also ask for a deal, and then deal can have, for example, multiple things inside, like custom fields. And then for custom field, you could ask for person, another person, and so you could have multiple person fields. And the N+1 problem would be that you load them one by one, and instead you want to like join it together and make single.
You can generate that subscription that will have everything inside.
Generate subscription, everything inside. Well, maybe. I'm not sure. Like usually we want to have normalized things here. We don't want to include all users inside a deal. So the
yeah, then event would be really fat, not slim.
Yes. That's we want to have slim events. Yes.
Actually, I was very interested by this title of the talk, like scaling GraphQL subscriptions, and I kind of expected something about upscaling these things on the high level, so I would ask, what is like the memory model of keeping subscription channels up in Node? Because in Go, if I remember correctly, we're still using channels under the hood, and some things go to heap because of that. And if you have like many clients, many events happening, but I haven't touched it never like in Node.js. How is Node.js performance-wise for subscriptions under the hood?
Well, I also wanted initially to have everything in Go, right? So we during the mission first 1 or 2 months, we've built only everything in Go. We didn't have this Node.js part. And that kind of worked, but the problem with scaling that kind of we saw that we want to scale to so many customers that one instance won't fit. So if you look back to the socket queue, yeah, we kind of shard. So we still rely on single instance to get the event and then deliver it to all customers. It's just that we limit how many customers are connected. So instead of 100,000 clients, a single socket queue instance maybe is connected to I don't know, 5,000 or 2,000 customers, right? So the impact of one event is pretty low. You can predict how many events you need to pass. But in here, we wanted to scale in such a way that we can horizontally scale these instances as much as we want. So basically, all of the customers would get connected to a random instance. And then this random instance needs to fetch data just for this specific company. So if you're talking about like memory or like efficiency, how events are managed. So in here, it is still sharded because Kafka partitions. But once it reaches Redis, and this part with Redis and GraphQL subscription service, they kind of scale horizontally, and Node just uses this async iterator. It connects to the PubSub, to specific company channel and specific entity and even specific ID, and just receives events for that.
But sometimes they are in memory, right?
Yes.
So if you have like many clients, you have many PubSubs in one node instance, so you have to scale up advantage, right?
If we have a lot of clients, then yes, we have, for example, one GraphQL instance connected to, I think there was, yeah, so in here, the red part here indicates that one company can be connected to, let's say, 2 instances, another company can be connected to 3 instances, and data will get shared across them through Redis.
You mentioned that Redis is like the weakest spot, and if you hit its limits, what's your next plan?
Yes, so the idea was that if we could share this information of who's actually connected through Redis to these workers, then, well, workers would write less data. You wouldn't need to write data from, let's say, integrations if we know that there is nobody connected on the front end. So that decreases load to Redis. Another solution is we could, well, Redis is already highly reliable thanks to Sentinel, but we could shard Redis if we really need to by entities. So you could have Redis for deals, for example. I wouldn't want to go that route, but so far it proved to kind of scale well. We had some incidents when Redis was kind of crashing because of CPU, but that was because the subscriptions were not configured very well, let's say. So you shouldn't use regex and subscribe to everything, because then Redis needs to kind of transport data to all instances if there is such a case. You want to the filter should work here very well.
Thank you for your questions. Artjom has touched on a lot of topics, from REST and GraphQL to PubSub services to load balancing to monoliths of PHP code. And I'm pretty sure you being developers have tons of questions to Artjom, which you will be able to ask after this event, obviously.
Yeah, you can contact me over email.
Cool, thank you.
Or, I don't know, LinkedIn, or over GitHub, Twitter. I'm available everywhere. So, yeah, feel free to reach out. Hopefully this helps you to not only choose GraphQL as a REST API replacement, but also as potential subscription replacement as well.
Yeah, and I see you all out of socks. So here are backup socks for you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your talk.
Thanks.
Yeah. This concludes our program for today. And as you have seen, we got 2 quite different talks on organizing work of a pretty big development company and on organizing all these events and queries and stuff like that. And you can add your own topics. If you want to present something, if you want to tell a story of something interesting you did at your work or as a hobby, just open the DEVCLUB website. There's a big red button on the top, suggest a talk, and you should press it. We got 2 conferences, one in English, this one in Russian. You can choose whichever, but we will be very happy to hear what you can tell us. Thank you, and have a great evening.